Okay, let's unpack this. We're looking at a source today, a really practical checklist from Penny Nest. It's all about building an emergency fund, especially for beginners.
Yeah, it really zeroes in on the basics, the step-by-step, which, is exactly what you need when you're starting out. It can feel pretty overwhelming otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. So our mission here is to kind of cut through that feeling and pull out the key takeaways from this guide. Like, how do you figure out how much you need? How do you actually save it? And how do you keep it ready?
Right, because life happens, doesn't it? That's the core why the source keeps coming back to.
Exactly.
A job loss pops up or a surprise medical bill, maybe the car breaks down.
Or something goes wrong at home. Yeah.
And if you don't have that cushion, well, you're looking at tough choices. Often it means debt, like high-interest credit cards, and that can really set you back. Penny Nest frames this fund as, like, a shield.
A shield. I like that. It really captures it. Now, the standard advice you hear everywhere is save 3 to 6 months of expenses. But honestly, that number can just sound huge. Impossible, almost.
It really can. And that's where this Penny Nest guide offers something I think really helpful. It acknowledges that big goal, the 3-6 months, but it strongly suggests starting smaller. Much smaller.
How small are we talking?
Well, it recommends aiming for just $500. Or maybe $1,000. That's your first target.
Okay.
The source says make that your #1 savings priority right now.
That immediately changes things, doesn't it? Like $15,000 feels miles away, but the $1,000, yeah, you can sort of see how you might get there relatively quickly.
Exactly. It's about momentum, psychological wins.
Right.
The article points out that this smaller starter fund, it can handle a lot of common, smaller bumps in the road. A minor car fix, that insurance deductible, replacing a microwave that died. Hitting that goal gives you immediate breathing room. And it proves to yourself you can save, builds confidence for the bigger target later, turns the marathon into manageable sprints.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Gets you moving. So, okay, you hit the mini goal. What about calculating that bigger 3 to 6 month number? The guide mentions essentials.
Yeah, it's pretty clear on that. Track your spending, obviously, but then you need to be ruthless. Pare it down to only what you absolutely need to survive.
Like rent or mortgage.
Right. Housing, basic utilities, essential food, transport to work, minimum debt payments, anything extra, any discretionary spending gets cut from this specific calculation.
Got it. So nail down the mini goal, calculate the big goal based only on essentials. Now, where does Penny Nest say you should actually put this money? Needs to be safe, but easy to get to. Yeah.
Exactly right. And the source is specific. A high-yield savings account, preferably an online one.
High-yield savings. Why that type of account? Not just your regular savings or even checking.
Good question. The article explains it's sort of a sweet spot. 3 things: safety, access, and a little bit of growth.
Okay.
HYSAs are FDIC or NCUA insured, so your money's safe, just like a regular account. They're liquid. You can usually get the cash in a few days. And importantly, they pay way more interest than your typical brick-and-mortar savings account. Helps fight inflation a bit.
So it balances being safe with being available. And I assume the guide warns against just leaving it in checking. Too easy to spend.
Precisely. Way too easy. And it's just as strong about not investing your emergency fund. No stocks, no long-term CDs. You can't risk losing the money or getting hit with penalties when you need it fast. Safety and access are king here.
Right. Makes sense. Okay, goal set. Account chosen. How do you consistently feed the beast? Saving is often that thing you plan to do later.
Yeah, and the source hits this hard. It's all about behavior, and the key is automation.
Set it and forget it.
Basically, yeah. Set up automatic transfers from your checking to that high-yield savings account. Do it right after you get paid.
Treat it like paying a bill. An important bill you owe yourself.
Spot on. The article really emphasizes this pay yourself first idea. It takes willpower out of the equation. It just happens.
Okay.
And to make that possible, the guide connects back to budgeting, finding ways to cut back on non-essentials, maybe even finding a small side hustle temporarily, just to free up cash specifically for that automatic transfer.
So it's a combo. Find the money, then automate putting it away. Does it mention tracking your progress?
It does. Watching the balance grow, maybe using a visual tracker, celebrating hitting that first $500 or $1,000. It all helps keep you motivated, builds the habit. That habit building is framed as key.
Okay, one last crucial thing. What if you actually have to use the money? That feels like, I don't know, failing, like you undid all the work.
This is actually a really powerful point in the source, kind of tucked in the FAQ. It says very clearly, using your emergency fund for a real emergency is not a failure.
Oh.
It's a success.
A success. How so?
Because it worked. Your plan worked. The shield did its job. It protected you from debt, from derailing everything else when that crisis hit. You avoided the bad outcome. That's the success.
Huh. That's a great perspective shift.
It really is. Then the guy just says, okay, now your priority is simply to build it back up again as soon as you reasonably can.
Wow. So building this fund, even just starting with that $500 or $1,000 goal, making the savings automatic.
Yeah.
It sounds like one of the most empowering things you can do for your financial well-being.
It really provides that foundational peace of mind, no question.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
So thinking about this penny nest guide, maybe ask yourself, what's the very first tiny step you could take, maybe even today, towards building that safety net? Or, here's another thought. If using the fund is actually a success, what does that really tell us about the true purpose of saving in the first place?
Definitely something to think about.
Well, thanks for diving deep with us on this. For more great guides and smart financial tips like the one we discussed, you can find resources over at pennynest.com. Stay prepared and stay informed.